Welcome back, everybody, to Is Fire for Me. I'm Jesse, this is my wife Kim, and today is another Frugal Friday.
Frugal Friday.
Ooh, jingle. We will be doing Chapter 4 this week. If this is your first time catching a Frugal Friday, after you've enjoyed this one, please go back and check out Chapters 1 through 3 and see. I'm sure there will be plenty for you to enjoy in those. So Kim, what is Chapter 4 bringing us today?
Chapter 4. So we are in The Art of Frugal Hedonism by Annie Razor Rowland and Adam Grubb. And Chapter 4 is Have a Lot of Things You Want to Do with Your Freedom. What came first, the frugality or the egg that had a lot of things it was excited about doing? In your author's case, definitely the excited egg. There is no better incentive for being frugal than having passions you want to chase. Let's break it down. Number 1. By consuming less, you have more money to spend on doing what you really want to do. Number 2, by consuming less, you have the option of doing less paid work, giving you more time to do what you really want to do, even if that happens to be chasing the kind of paid work that you really want to do. You can do a little bit of one and a little bit of two and have both the time and money to do the things you really want to do, cake, and eating it. Back when Annie was a party-hard pop punk, she dreamed of secretive visions of herself traveling through Guatemala, climbing volcano after volcano, or decorating a whole house with holographic wallpaper, and knew that she'd need cash to make those things happen when the urge took her by the jugular. And so she taught herself to make the clothes she wanted out of old clothes. She made a decision to religiously love cheese and tomato sandwiches every day for lunch, while everyone around her bought takeaway kebabs. Instead of going to the pub, she cajoled friends into drinking boxed wine in deck chairs on the sidewalk, illegal but lovely, and enticed strangers into sitting down to join in. She never made a budget or even thought about money much, but instead forged a basic assumption that most things that people spend money on have an equally satisfying cheap or free alternative. And despite her minuscule income, the savings did slowly but surely pile up. Enough that she had the freedom to go spend a couple of mind-blowingly fantastic years climbing those volcanoes. Giving up regular, untrammeled consumption actually feels quite easy when you have a sense that it's for the sake of a life studded with superior pleasures. Taking your kids on a month-long hiking trip perhaps, paying off your house, getting a weekly massage, or just taking time off work to think or do drawings. The self-restraint of tempered consumption may seem at odds with current cultural urgings to live in the moment. However, the dominant modern angle on this philosophy seems not so much Buddhist-style being in the moment, but the very impulse spending compatible living for the moment. Funny that. Spontaneity is a glorious quality, but manifesting it by reliably blowing every cent you have on whatever catches your eye is not its most stellar manifestation. Putting money aside to enable life to change when you want or need it to isn't about being a financial prude. It's about not being trapped. It allows for spontaneity on a much grander scale. If you do take up a life of spending much less and working as it suits you, you might feel as though you are doing something slightly illegal, or that this can't work forever, it'll come back to bite me later somehow. Your authors know this because we were plagued by the same suspicion ourselves for many years. This seems like such a good deal. Surely we can't just keep getting away with it. Where's the catch? Decades on, we have left this uncertainty in the dust. We still hardly ever think about money, we still love most of what we do most of the time, and we still appear to be very much getting away with it. But what if I don't really have the things I want to do? So, more freedom to choose what to do with your time is one of the fabulous side effects of spending less. Hip hip hooray! Let's all go to the beach. Now let's watch a movie, or maybe 3 movies in a row. Now let's sleep in until 11 and then spend the whole day reading Swallows and Amazons, eating cheese and crackers, feeling nostalgic for our lost youth, and weeping a little. Now what? What to do next when no one is making us do it? Yes, you've spotted the glitch. Freedom, when we've become unaccustomed to it, can be quite daunting. If you've already had practice dealing with this, skip the rest of this tip. If you feel even a flicker of existential terror, read on. Why does this conundrum exist at all? From a tender age, society encourages us to lay aside our impetus to do things for their own sake, intrinsic motivation, and to instead do much of what we do for external reasons. As a young child, you were almost certainly an intrinsically motivated learner. and spent most of your waking hours fascinated by the world and inventing endless adventures in pursuit of discovering how it all worked. Soon, however, schooling converted learning into something you did for external motivations, grades, rewards, and punishments. Working life then continues to reinforce this pattern of doing things for external motivations. What's more, shaping your life around employment is a shortcut not only to motivation and structure, but to social and personal validity. Once adapted to this setup, people can find that as much as they might pine for holidays and crave more downtime, they aren't actually overflowing with ideas for what to do with this time when they get it. And fair enough, it would be a stressful existence to be constantly dreaming up things you would like to do if you don't expect to ever really have the time to do them. We'd like to make a suggestion, dear reader. If you do alter your lifestyle to give yourself more control over your own time, and then find yourself disinclined to act without external pressures, cut yourself some slack for a while. If you feel deeply decoupled from your lust for learning and your intrinsic motivation to cha-cha with life is gone la-la, expect to even feel a little bored and lost. Most people will need a goodly spell of recovery time, using whatever extra free hours their frugal ways have scored them to both catch up on a backlog of life maintenance activities, getting a dental checkup, cleaning out the shed, and to mooch about the house taking naps and eating peanut butter out of the jar. At some point, you will start to feel itchy of spirit. This is the perfect time to brainstorm a list of stuff that you'd like to do. And don't you dare leave anything off that list just because it doesn't sound meaningful. Most of us could come up with oodles of things we do at our jobs that are almost surrealistically meaningless, and yet we treat those as a reasonable way to spend time. If you want to spend 4 hours a week practicing throwing circus knives, that is at least as legitimate a use of your time as spending 4 hours per week formatting a corporate e-newsletter to meet its style requirements, knowing all the while that no one actually cares.
Wow, this is, I think this is fairly relevant right now with the virus going on and so many people having more time than they are used to and not as much ability to do their normal free time that they would normally spend doing. So I feel like we're getting to experience this, lack of what should I do with my day pretty well right now. So I think this is a very relevant chapter. So. And also, this has been something that you have been blessed with getting to sample a little bit, with getting to quit your job last year at the end of the year. And so why don't you tell us kind of what your experience has been?
Yeah, so last October, after much soul searching, Jesse and I made the decision to have me stop the job that I was working. I was working somewhere between 40 and 60 hours a week, and it was pretty high stress, and I was finding that I didn't have a lot of outside time to do other things that I really wanted to invest some time in, like caring for our home and being a more supportive partner and going on hikes and helping Jesse make these videos. So I stopped working in October with the intent to take about a year off of work, and that lasted 2 months. Most all of November and December I was off of work, and then in January I started a little side business to do move out cleans and some pet care and event consulting, so home support type services. And I also reactivated my nursing license and got a very, very part-time nursing job just to keep my license active and add a little bit of extra income to our budget. So
to be fair, you were kind of forced into that, right?
True.
I mean, for those who don't know, Kim was a registered nurse for how many years?
About 10.
About 10 years, and then she put her license on inactive status, and you're only allowed to do that for so many years in order to make sure that nurses keep up their training and don't come back to nursing when they're not trained to do so. So you were at the end of your inactive status abilities, and you need to decide, do you lose your license or do you reactivate?
True. That is true. That was the time constraint. So during those first 2 months, it was the holiday season, and so I was able to decorate our house for Christmas and get together with family, because this was before we had a pandemic across our globe. And I found that really rewarding. I found it rewarding to not have such a rigid schedule. I did feel a little bit of what they talked about in here with that sort of aimlessness. I think our culture specifically, being in a capitalist society, most of us are pretty product driven, and we are products of the companies that we work for. And so, in a lot of ways, our days are structured around how we can make them the most money, or if we're entrepreneurs, how can we make ourselves the most money and be the most useful. So, I kind of explored some of the concepts of productivity culture and whether or not I wanted to continue being a cog in the wheel, so to speak. And so I grappled with some of that for the first couple of months. And then I got into this very comfortable pattern of working fairly infrequently. And so I still have quite a few days that I don't work compared to the days that I do. And I've really enjoyed spending time thinking a lot of things and researching a lot of the things that I've been thinking in light of the recent Black Lives Matter resurgence in the wake of George Floyd's death. I've done a lot of work unpacking internalized racism that's within myself and within a lot of the people, that are in my very white community. And so it's been really nice to explore a lot of resources and content put out by people of color and Black folks and other white allies. It's also been nice to just have a chance that if somebody recommends something for me to read and watch, I actually get to do that. So that's been really enjoyable. And then being able to come out here and help you with making some videos and content. So it's really given me a good opportunity to spend a lot of time doing a lot of deeper personal self-discovery work that I don't think I would be able to do if I was working a regular job and then caring for family and home and things of that nature.
Now, obviously, you're very employable and you could go back out and get another job. And it hasn't been that long since you were last employed. So, given the opportunity, do you think at this point you would, unless obviously needed, but at the current stage, do you think you would go back out and search for employment again, or are you happy with kind of the direction you're headed?
I think it really depends. I think it depends on the job and the opportunity. I like the idea of using my skill set to move forward a cause that I believe in. And so if something like that came up, I think I'd be interested in it. We also need to decide kind of where you're headed with things. It's quite a luxury to be able to be home and for the most part, get enough sleep and help take care of your home and really do a lot of the life things that most of us just kind of rush through. And so I'd love to be able to help you get to a place where that can be the life that you have for yourself as well.
Great, yeah. So I think I've gotten to see as Kim's gone through this, and I have seen you kind of struggle with trying to figure out what you're going to do with your days or how you want to structure them, and not necessarily unhappy with your day and how it went, but feeling a little guilty that maybe you didn't get enough done. And so I think it's interesting to see how when we come from a culture of do, accomplish, 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 that we now aren't driven to have to do anything. It feels like maybe we did something wrong, and I think that's definitely something a lot of people are going to have to overcome, especially if you go into early retirement or something like that. It's definitely going to be something that's more difficult for people to adapt to. So
I think in the United States especially, we're sort of human doings rather than human beings, right?
mhm.
And so a lot of us get our sense of self and identity from what we accomplish and what we're able to do from a task point of view. And so for me, it's really been kind of shifting mentally what I consider to be a success. So yes, maybe it's successful to get 10 or 15 things on my overly drawn up to-do list, but also it's maybe successful to be a really good friend who is able to carve out a couple of hours to listen to someone who was grappling with something or really wanted to talk about something that was going on in their life. I know in the last video I talked about trying to take apart those two hose nozzles, right? If I was working 60 hours a week, both of those would have gone in the garbage and we would have just bought a new one. And I never would have had the opportunity to really kind of explore how they worked. And that was a fun mental endeavor as well as trying to be a little bit more materialistic and frugal.
Yeah.
So not having your time taken up by work or the need to have an income or through financial independence and early retirement really frees you up to explore a lot of things that maybe you wouldn't have had the time to explore as you're just trying to like grind through this productivity driven life that we all live.
Yeah. I think coming from the side of still being employed and just getting to enjoy the benefits of you not having to work, I think there's still plenty of benefits that I get to reap from Kim not working, and that is she works very hard to make sure that all of the or most of the chore type items that she can accomplish without me are accomplished during the week while I'm working, so that when we do have weekends together or evenings together, we can do just that and spend them together and not feel like we've got to get home from work and start working on our chores or this or that. So obviously there's still going to be things that that I help around the house with and stuff like that, but my duties at home have definitely lessened, and so I think that's been very enjoyable to have to get to experience. So even though I am not, I still have to go to work every day. I can still enjoy some of the facts that Kim gets to be off. So
Nice.
yeah. So, and I mean, to be fair, you're managing our Airbnb, so that is definitely something that's taking a decent amount of your time, especially the summertime. It gets very busy. And you're, like you mentioned, you've got a part-time job as a nurse, so you're doing that. You started up your own little business, so you get to choose how much of that you want to do with your day. But you know, you're also getting to choose to spend some of your time doing some of these other items that you've, you know, decided are very important to you. So
yeah,
it's exciting. So it's exciting for me to get to see that eventually we'll get to a stage of financial independence where we'll both get to do that, and see what kind of struggles I deal with when I don't have someone driving my day. I know that I'm not as self-motivated as Kim is, and so it's going to definitely be a lot different for me. I can wake up on a Saturday and stay in bed till 10 or noon if I wanted to, and then just feel guilty about it in the evening when I didn't get as much done and somehow the day is already gone. So I'll definitely have to structure my days a little more, I think, to make sure that I do that. But I think one of their points here is that learning to be okay with not accomplishing as much. So I think that's kind of what they wanted. Did we kind of get what they were getting at in that chapter there?
We did. They did close with a story, so I thought we could close with that story as well.
Okay.
So, the artist as family. One of the hallmarks of a practiced frugal hedonist is that people are constantly asking them how they manage to take so many holidays. A frugal hedonist tends to work for as long as feels right, then decides to pop off to walk across Mongolia for a year. It can understandably make other people a tad peevish, as the frugal hedonist was likely only working part-time in the first place, and probably generally seemed to enjoy their time at work, maybe because they chose their job based on what they were interested in, rather than how much money it could make them. Let's meet a couple who no doubt elicit many perplexed questions about their unusual work-life ratio. We think their most recent adventure perfectly demonstrates how having things you're passionate about doing can be an amazing motivation for living frugally. Meg and Patrick have 2 children, Zeph, 11, and Woody, 1, and a Jack Russell Terrier. The whole family, including Zero the dog, recently spent a year traveling eastern Australia from bottom to top and back again by bicycle. Throughout the 6,000-kilometer trip, they sourced as much of their food as possible by foraging, hunting, and barter. The journey was about having an incredible time together, but also aimed to demonstrate that a family can travel on next to no money without relying on fossil fuels or the industrial food system. Being just as devoted as your authors are to sharing their tricks for living it up on the cheap, they've written a book about their experience. They didn't get a credit card to help pay for this trip, nor did they put in any overtime. In fact, they have scarcely had time for paid work for a while now, so busy have they been producing art, a baby, a thesis, and dedicating untold hours to several community organizations in their small rural town. They can afford to be so giving with their time and to go on adventures because for several years their whole family's annual expenditure has been about Australian dollars 20,000. Around 1/4 of the Australian household average. How do they do it? Giving up their cars was a pretty key step. Meg says Patrick saw on the RACV, the State Motor Vehicle Association, website that it saves you $13,500 a year not having a car. We had two, so there was nearly $30,000 right there. They cook with simple whole ingredients, grow their own vegetables and eggs, and forage wild foods. They live in a non-ostentatious house and shop at second-hand shops. Their generosity with their time, energy, and surplus produce within the town's community comes back to them, and they are amazed by how many of their needs end up being met by the local gift economy. They describe how during the months after their son Woody was born, every time we would leave the house and come back, there would be things left for us. Clothes, meals, pretty much everything a new parent could need. Patrick says life's become so much better living with the reduction of necessary income. Meg agrees. Freedom wasn't the initial motivator for why they started cutting their consumption, but it has become the main driver. For me, the more we give up, the more I want to give up.
That's a cool story. I liked it.
Yeah.
So, well, let us know what you thought in the comments down below, and give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for coming by, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.